Do you find yourself sitting there looking at your bills, trying to figure out how to get by? I've been there. I think a lot of us have been there. But there are ways to figure out what you can cut. And that's what we're going to talk about today on my channel, Pennies to Dollars. Welcome to all the new viewers. I'm so glad to have you here. And welcome back to all of those of you who've been following me. If we have a low income, how do we know what we can cut? We can get a second or a third job. That is something that I did for many, many years. I worked 2 and 3 jobs, and my first job ever, I made $3.35 an hour. And there were days that I only got a 4-hour shift, and I would drive 20 miles each way for $3.35 an hour. And yes, things cost less back then, but that was hardly any money, even back then. And so, as we look at our income and decide whether or not it's worth it to get a second job, to get a third job, or if we can look at things to figure out how to live on what we have and cut expenses so that we have more money without putting out more time. As time went on, I got better jobs, $9 an hour. I made it clear up to like $78,000 a year. And I continued to live like I made $9 an hour because I was used to it. And it gave me extra money when I needed it. And it made it where I could put my kids through college. And I had 6 kids. So I had 2 in college at basically any given time until I got to the last one. And the last one cost as much as 2 because inflation hit the colleges as well on tuitions and fees. So there are ways to get by on less money. And as you go along, you can add tips and tricks and little things to see if they make a difference. But for me, adding little tips and tricks along the way, they make it a lot easier. And my time to me is worth it more. I just work one job now and I'm back to 42,000 a year. And I could live on 30,000 or less because I've learned how to do that. And as I look forward to retirement, I have been practicing on living with less so that I can still live comfortably and live within my means. So the first thing that I do is I look at what I really need. Do I have the basics? Do I have transportation? Do I have a roof over my head? Do I have clothes and shoes to wear? And do I have food in the cabinet and fresh water to drink? That's what we really honestly need. Everything else is just ruffles and bows. And you know as well as I do that if you're trying to save money on wrapping a present, you leave off that bow. So this is what I look at on how I can make things stretch, spend less money, and still have everything that I need. So if we recognize what we have right now, do we have enough clothes? Do we have enough shoes? Those are 2 areas that many times we end up having an overabundance of, and we don't even realize how much that area has grown or how much money we've spent in that area. Food is another one. Are we making good choices? Are we spending our dollar where it doesn't make us in debt for food? Are we buying simple foods and making simple casseroles and stews and one pot dinners that will make that dollar stretch and still fill our tummies? Filling our tummies is really the goal at the end of that meal. It doesn't have to be extravagant. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just needs to keep us full until the next meal or until morning. Do we have too fancy of a car or too large of a house that we're trying to pay for when we really don't have the money? That's one thing that I have thought about over the years because there were times that I was making a lot of money and I was gone so many hours that I wasn't even in my house. And a lot of people realize that at some point, that they're making a lot of money and yet they're not even getting to enjoy the profits of the money that they're making because they're gone all the time. So, whatever you are not changing, you are choosing. You have to make enough money to support those choices. So, if we recognize what we have and sit down and do a good analysis of what we really have, do we have enough or do we have too much? So, as I've been practicing on living on a lower income, I've realized that I can live comfortably at about $900 a month. $900, and I can live the way I'm living now and not miss out on a thing. Now, if I want to save money on top of that 900, I still can go on vacations. I still can do things I want to do and have extra money. But that's all I need to get by and have what I do need. What can you change immediately? That's not a big deal. That is just something maybe you need to think a little bit more about or pay attention to as you're doing it. For instance, we don't run our air conditioner probably 90% of the time in the summertime. Now, if it gets too hot, we will. But because we don't run our air conditioner, I am extra sensitive to noticing what makes my house hot and what doesn't. And so, one of the things that I do is when we're done cooking something on the stove top in the summer, I immediately put a lid back on that. I keep that heat from escaping because in the summer, just cooking something on top of the stove can really heat up my kitchen. But in the winter, when I want my house to be warmer, I'll take that lid off that pot and let that pot cool on the stove and let that heat escape into the kitchen to make it a little warmer. I never put my pot straight into the sink. I let it heat or cool with or without that lid, depending on the temperature on my stove. And I choose pots and pans that fit the burner. You will actually save money by doing that. If you have an electric stove, you will save more money than if you have a gas stove. But even so, just doing simple things like that will help you save on your utilities. And you may sit there and say, that is just too petty to even matter. But they've done studies on this back in 2022. And you can save $18 a year if you have a gas stove just by choosing the proper burner size. And we all know the rates on electricity have gone up since 2022. You can save $36 a year if you have an electric stove, according to this 2022 study. So, see, all of those little things, they do add up. They do make a difference. My electric bill went down $17 this month. I was thrilled with that. $17 is $17. Now, if it goes up $17, I'm also going to be aware of that. And I'm going to try to look at what have I done to raise it $17. I don't just look at that bill, write out the check, or pay it online and not really think about my habits that have changed that month or why it's gone down or why it's gone up. I put some thought into what is causing my bill to fluctuate. So, those are some little things you can change immediately, and there's tons more. I have all kinds of videos on how to lower your electric bill, save money in all kinds of areas in your household, and I will attach some at the end of this video if you're interested in listening to some of that. Inaction is actually a way to make it harder on ourselves because when you don't do anything, you are making that choice to pay that extra $17 on that electric bill. If you're just ignoring it, it may go up to $34 next month and you still haven't figured out why it went up $17. So those little things can creep up on you. And when you add them up for 12 months out of the year, they can really make it hard to live on a low income. So I hope you will take some action on how to lower your expenses. There's so many things that people get used to having in their house all the time. When I had 6 kids at home, I used paper plates. I was working 2 and 3 jobs. I was using paper plates. It kept me from doing dishes and it made my life a lot easier. I don't use paper plates now. I don't use paper napkins. I don't use paper towels. I don't even use plastic wrap or tin foil except at Christmas if I need it. And that's only because I run out of containers because we have a larger meal or more leftovers. But through the whole year, I don't buy plastic wrap or tin foil because I just don't use it. I found how to use reusable items that save me money overall. I'm living in the same house. I have no mortgage, have no car payment, and we switched to a Roku box here a few years back and cut the cable. And I didn't even want to get cable. But if you remember, at one point, we had to have those little boxes to be able to use the digital TVs. Everything switched from analog to digital, and we had to have those little boxes. Well, because of where I live, I couldn't get any reception. And the only channel I could get wasn't in English, but I was sitting there watching this soap opera anyway in another language because that's the only channel I could get. My kids would come in and say, "Why are you watching that?" And I said, "Because I can understand crying, dirty looks, and broken glass being waved in people's faces in any language." And I enjoyed watching it, even though I didn't understand everything that was happening. My kids really didn't watch TV, it was more me that watched it. And so at one point, we were having really, really bad weather. And Kansas is a tornado state, as you know. And so I decided that I needed to get cable, if nothing else, just so we had weather alerts when things like this happened. So we had cable hooked up on the day of my youngest daughter's prom when there were 5 tornadoes that evening. And I'd had cable ever since then because I didn't know there was any other choice to be able to get any other TV reception. That was about another $180 a month. Yes, in this area, that is what it had raised up to. So, as you look through your situation and you determine what is important and what you have plenty of, and you make those assessments, remember that whatever you're going through is temporary. It doesn't mean it's always going to be like this, it doesn't mean you always have to live like this. But making sure that you have food and shelter and water and clothing and transportation is the most important right now till we get through this rough patch. I thank you for watching today, and I hope to see you in the next video.